Going to kickstart something today that was related to Excel automation as well as database automation. So when we are talking about Excel automation, so one thing we just need to keep in mind is all about data table operations and all. So we would like to see what is being done on the data tables. Then we will try to see how to actually read some data, write some data back to Excel and all. So that is what we would like to see. Apart from that, we will also try to see something that was related to connecting with a particular database, try to get some data, update some data, and all these things, right? So that's our initial plan for now. So let's try to get those things done. So let me just open the existing project which we have created for us. Fine. So what I was trying to do, I'll just create a new sequence. First, I'll create a new flowchart. It's a new flowchart. So which will talk about data table activities, right? So when I was just trying to talk about data table activities, I'll try to search for data table activities here. So what is basically data table? So data table is a type of variable which tries to store data in the form of rows and columns. So whenever there is a row and column data, so there definitely the data table will try to come into picture. So when you're trying to read some Excel file or else a database file or else an workbook or a CSV file, so the data which is tried to store is something we try to do it in a data table. So if it's a string data, so you'll try to utilize a string variable, or else if it's a numbers, you will try to utilize integers. If it is a date or time, we'll try to utilize data time variables. If it is true or false, we'll try to utilize a boolean variables, right? So similarly, data in form of rows and columns, you will try to utilize basically build data table. Okay, I'm like a data table. So build data table will help you to just define the schema. So let's say that I'm trying to create some data here. So instead of reading from an Excel, so I'll try to create a column called name, domain, location, and I would like to also say gender. Okay. So these are the four columns I'm just trying to create. So you can also just make sure that, hey, I want gender in the second place. You can remodify it. So I'll say like so gender is male. So domain is, let's say, IP. So location is from Hyderabad. So I just want to create more data. Okay. So let's say Kishore, so male, IT. He is also, let's say, from Bangalore. Okay. So Ram, male, IT is also from Bangalore. And let's say Subha, female. So she is also from IT and she is from Bangalore. So let's say we have also other people called Priya, female, IT from Hyderabad. Okay. So let's create a small last row. We have the male. So IT, let's say he's from Chennai. Okay. So this were the data which I just want to go. So how many rows we have basically? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. How many columns we have? So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So basically the index starts from 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So now I have created a build data table. Right? I have created a data table with the schema. So I want to store the data in DT1. Right. So after storing the data, let's say I want to basically see how many rows of data I have and how many columns of data I have basically. Okay. So to do that, we have something called so to get the rows right. So I want to see the rows, how many rows we have. So we have something called dt1 dot rows count. Okay. So dot to string because I'm trying to utilize that thing in the new line plus vbcrlf to print it in the new line. Excuse me. So similarly, I want to see how many columns I have basically. So to get that, I will say dt1 dot columns count dot to string. Like so, we are trying to get the rows count and the columns count basically. And let me also take another thing to print directly that in the message box if you utilize. So it will just say it's a data table, system dot data table, right? So what we can do is we have something called output data table where we can convert the data table into text. So let me open that. The data table I'm trying to convert is dt1 and you are trying to convert that into variable called str text. Okay. So finally, I'm converting the particular data and I'm trying to print that in the message box. Okay. So I'm passing here str text to just have the particular data. So let me just save the file, try to run the file for us. Let's see what's the data that was coming on the way. So we have around 6 rows of data and 4 columns of data. And the data for the name, gender, domain, location is Kiran, male, IT, Hyderabad, all this data, right? So we can also add the rows, remove the rows, add the columns and delete the columns. Okay. So let's say I just want to add a column. So let's say I want to add some column, add data column is utilized. Or else you want to add a row, you can utilize a add data row. So for that, let's say I'm trying to add some row, right? So I'll try to see what is the data before adding the row and what is the values of these things after adding the rows, right? So what I can do is I just want to add a let's say column. So after adding the column, I just want to see what is the add the column need to provide the column name. So data table you want to add. I want to add it in a data table called dt1. Okay. And what is the default value? We can also provide a default value. So I am trying to say the default value is India. Okay. And the type of the argument basically you can select here. It's a string type. Fine. So we have particular things. Let's try to see what we can actually do with this adding of column. So let me try to run the file. So earlier we might be having only 4 columns, right? So we have only 4 columns, but after adding the things, we have around like 5 columns, right? And the country for all the values, all the rows, by default, we have provided that as India. So we can provide the default values. So that is what we can do here in terms of adding the row, sorry, adding the columns. So now instead of adding the columns, I just want to utilize something called add data row, where you are trying to add a row. Okay, so that's our agenda. So let me just open the row. So we need to provide the schema of adding the rows in the form of an array. So what is the values I want to add? First thing is the name. So we will try to add through. So gender. So gender is male. So we have something called IT as a domain, and location. Let's say let's keep it to Hyderabad. Right. So earlier, how many rows of data we have? See, we have 6 rows of data. So in which data table you want to add? I want to add it in DT1, right? So I'm just trying to save the data, try to run the file to see how many rows of data we have here basically. Right, we have 6 rows earlier, and now we have like 7 rows after adding the data. And the added value, it's nothing but path through to mail ID Hyderabad is added into the set, right? So fine. So this is something how you can add the data or delete the data. Uh, Now I just want to understand something that was like how I can actually remove the duplicate rows, right? So let's say I am trying to add some other data here. So which is from his mail, he's from IT, and he's also from Bangalore. I'm also adding other data which is Kiran. So we have Kiran, right? Yes, we have Kiran. He's also male. He's from IT and he's also from Bangalore location. So nothing but we have 2 rows of data which is duplicated. Nothing but the same data was there. So in real time, what we will do is we will try to process the same data. Nothing but if you are trying to generate a loan approval process, the same data is getting repeated for the same people. Right, the same process is repeated multiple times, which is nothing but waste of time, right? So sometimes people might be submitting the loan applications couple of times, so assuming that the first application might not be saved properly, right? So in that cases, our agenda is to just process only the data once, not twice, right? So in that case, so we know it's a small data, right? It's a small data consisting of around like 9 rows, and easily can identify, hey, Ram and Kiran are the duplicates, and you can remove it easily. But not in case when you're trying to process real-time data. So in that case, what we can do is we have a very powerful what I can say activity which will help us in removing the duplicate rows. So we have something called remove duplicate rows. So let me just open the activity. The red table which will help us in removing is DT1. And after removing also just save the data in the DT. Right. So no need to provide any conditions. So no need to provide anything. So you just need to provide stating that so that is my input data and you try to store the data in the DT1 itself. So save all, try to run the file. Right. So we have something. Okay. So I have kept it as Bangalore. So we are getting the data. So what I'll do, I'll just update the data here to saying Kiran is from Hyderabad. Okay. So now even that value will be deleted. So without using this particular activity, let's disable this. So let's try to run the file. So we have Kiran, Kishore, Ram. So Kiran and Ram, which is repeating multiple times. So Ram and Kiran, right? So now if I just enable this activity, so let me just save the file, try to run the file. So we can see that the Pradeep, sorry, the Ram and the Kiran values were deleted, which was earlier there twice, right? So that is how we can utilize in duplicate rows, which can help you out in doing the things. So other things we have here, data table activities is clear data table. So clear data table helping. programmatically to clear the data inside the data table. Okay, so collection to data table where you can convert the data from collection to a data table, nothing but list to data table. So now let's try to utilize something called sort data table. Okay, so what is a sort data table? So sort will help you to sort your data. So based on your requirements. So let's say I have something called age. Okay, I'll keep a column called age. Okay, so I'll just say Kiran is 30. Remove the duplicates. Ram and Kiran. Okay, Kiran is 30, 21, Ram is let's say 67. So Sudha is like 21 or 22. Priya is 25, 26. Pradeep is 25. Okay, so it's a mix and match. Like you can see 30 is higher and it's decreasing, and again it's increasing, it's decreasing, increasing and decreasing, right? So it's mix and match of jumbled data. But let's say in real time, the priority should be given to people of higher age or lesser age, or data which has been I'm like been there in the last 1 week, or else you need to process data only of last 30 days. No. So how can you do that? So let me just show you the activity sort data table. So in the sorted data table, we need to provide the input in which data table you are trying to sort. I will say it's DT1 basically. Okay, let's say. So where you want to store the output? Yes, in the same DT1, I want to store the output. We can provide the name of the column here. What's the name of the column? It's age, basically, right? Whether you want to go with an ascending order or descending order, I want to go with the ascending order, nothing but increasing order, right? So you'll have data which is increasing order at the first and decreasing order at the last. I'm like, the lower age will be at the top and the higher age will be at the bottom. Let's see. See, we have 21, 22, 25, 26, 30, and 67. So nothing but persons with the less age are processed first and higher age are processed last. Right? Even we can provide the same thing in the descending order based on our requirements too. Just try to run the file, right? We can also achieve the same thing, right? 67 at the top and 21 at the last. So other interesting thing I just want to showcase now. So we have seen already earlier about filter data table. So now let's say I just want to do the same thing without, I don't know about the link queries, right? Let's say most of the people who are from non-background, non-IT backgrounds, or else like who are starting fresh, might not be not knowing something about the uh, things, right? So I want to filter, let me have, I utilize the autopilot feature. So before that, I just want to understand, I want to say that I want to see the people who are female. Okay. So then we'll try to get Bangalore and Hyderabad. So let's add another value also. So let's say I will add Pallavi, she's female, and IT and Hyderabad, right? So I want to process people who are female and Hyderabad location. So we will get the data of two people here. So one is Priya and Pallavi, right? So that I can achieve it using filter data table also, but I want to see the same thing being created by natural language, nothing but the autopilot feature, and see how we can achieve the same thing, right? So filter data table, or else like we'll say, so create an inquiry, okay, to filter data table DT1. So based on column called a location, right? So location is a column with value. So what's the value? We can say it's HYD, right? So I am just hitting to write that particular query created for us. See, automatically a query is created for us without me trying to write any sort of a query here. So I just asked it and it has provided me the data, right? Stating that a location filter is basically Hyderabad and that is copied to a data table, right? That's great. Let's try to see if the same thing is getting worked or not. I'm trying to assign the same value to DT1. So instead of printing all the values, I need to get only the data, which is basically from Hyderabad as a female data. So let's try to run the file, see what's actually coming for us as an outcome. So we have Hyderabad location, right? So we have Hyderabad location. Okay. So people from Hyderabad location as Kiran, Priya, and Pallavi. But I want female also, right? So I would like to write that also. So stating that I want to get only female. And in above query, add another filter for column gender as female. Right. So it was also providing me a query, which is not only for location as Hyderabad and also gender as female. Okay. So in that case, I need to get only two persons data, which we already discussed earlier. It's nothing but Priya and Pallavi, right? Which we are trying to do. So earlier, what we have to do is to search for the queries, we is to try to make sure that it's working fine for us, and that's how we used to do earlier. But now it's very much advanced, and where you can definitely use the features like autopilot and also auto fix. So sometimes what you'll do during these things, you might be what I can say, miss something here, right? So I've just deleted a row dot, right? So while writing, I just might just write without utilizing that dot method. So here we have something called auto fix method, right? Just click on that. Automatically, it will help you to fix the existing error. It has created the dot for us, right? So this is how these two features can help you out to maximize or speed up your development efforts and all. So that is what we can do here in terms of data tables, right? So now let's try to jump into how we can connect with SQL Studio Management. I think how a database can be connected from UiPath. So that is what we will try to see. So before that, try to make sure that there is something called SQL Server Management Studio installed in your system. So we are trying to connect with something called a SQL Server. So I'd like to say is connect. I'm trying to get a server name here. So in the databases, so we have a database called master. Okay. So in the master, we have tables. Let's try to expand. Let's see what we can try to get out of it. So before that, we would like to search if my packages related to database is installed or not. So what I'll do, I'll try to search for database activities. It's not installed. So, okay, it's installed. Okay. If not installed, try to make sure that it's installed. So sometimes as default, you won't be able to get that. So it's taking time to load. So I remember a column select star from, okay. Let's wait for another couple of minutes to just make sure that we are having the data in the master be visible to us. Still loading. So maybe I've just created some database things. Just want to verify what is the table name. Let's see what's there in the project files. Files I have data export, XAML, connect to database. What's the table insert? I'm trying to insert in target test one. Maybe I'll try to see test one. Okay, system databases. So we have master. Let's start a search for master. So test one. Okay, fine. So let's try to utilize this particular table called test one. So where we have first name, last name, and the city, and we have around like 28 rows of data. So I want to extract the particular data. So let's see how we can extract these things. So let me just open a new flowchart for us. So let's say I'm trying to get the data from database and write it back to the Excel, right? So for that, I'll say uh, DB to Excel, right? So when we are talking about database activities, first of all, we need to make sure that we are connected to a database. So I would like to utilize connect to database. So this is very much important in understanding how we can connect to a database. So I'll try to click on configuration. Okay. So before that, try to make sure that you have copied your server details. So what is a connection string? Connection string will help you to connect with a particular database. So I'm saying that since I want to go with something that was related to a SQL client, I'll utilize that. So as I'll click on connection wizard, data source is a SQL server. Okay. And you have to provide the server name. This is the server name. So just hit on refresh. And here I'll try to select the database name. It's not responding. Well, let's close it. Try to open it again. Okay. Let me just open the file for us again. So we have our project file, right? So let me just use a connect activity here directly in the main. So connect to database. So click on configure connection, click on connection wizard. So in the data source, I'm trying to say I'm trying to connect with the SQL server. So this is the server name. And after which I need to provide the database here. Okay. So here I'm trying to select the database called master. So I would like to click on text connection. So if it is green, nothing but you have successfully made a connection to the database. Okay. So just hit on OK, hit on OK, and try to save the data of your output database connection in a variable called dbconnect. Fine. So now we are able to establish a connection. So let's try to see what else we have here in the database. So we have something called connect to database where we have connected. So we would like to utilize a run query. Okay. So whatever the query I have written here, right? The same thing. Select star from test one. I will try to write the same thing. So I would like to say I already have the existing connection. So in the connect to database, I have utilized something called dbconnect. And what is the query you want to write basically? So I want to write the query stating that let us select star from test one. This is the table name I have in the database. So after writing the query where you want to store the data, I want to store the data in a variable called dt1. Okay, fine. So after getting the data where you want to write, I want to write the data using write range workbook. Nothing but you're trying to write the data after reading it from the database. So where you want to write, what's the file? So you can create a file here. So data db dot xlsx. Okay. So what is the sheet name? So the sheet name is basically, let's say db. What's the data you want to write? The data is dt1. And try to make sure in the properties you had the headers. Okay. So you have connected to database, you have written the query where you're trying to store the data in a data table, after which you're trying to write the same data into a data table, into a workbook, nothing but your Excel, right? And it is the best practice to disconnect from the database. So disconnect from the database is an activity which is a best practice. So I'll try to say db disconnect is I'm passing the existing connection db connect, which will help you to disconnect from the database. Okay, fine. So let me just save the file, see what is the data that's been written for us from your database to Excel. You have 28 rows of data. So in the project folder, you will have your file data db. So just open the file, see what's the data is written for us. So you can see 28 rows of data is being written for us, right? Right. So this is how you can just connect with the database and do the things. Let's say I want to uh, update if there is last name as Hyperautomation-ai, okay, or as like city as Hyderabad. I want to update the first name or the last name here. So how can I do that? So I require some query, right? I'll just open ChatGPT. Let's see what we can do here. So what I'll do, I'll open. So I'm trying to run some other queries. So I'll utilize something called run command instead of run query and see what is the existing data here. Okay. And I will write the data into new sheet called DB1. Okay. So what is a query? I have already existing connection, which is basically called DB connect. But now what I want to do is I want to update something, right? Uh, Update query if city is Hyderabad, update column last name as UiPath. So we have last name as UiPath. So this is what I want to write. So this is something which you want to see. Let's see. Let's copy the code. So we have copied the code. Okay. So update your table name. So my table name is basically test one. Okay. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is if city is basically Hyderabad. Okay. If city is basically Hyderabad, I want to update the last name as UiPath. Okay. So we have last name as Hyperautomation-ai, right? So let's try to update here. Execute. So we have seen like 24 rows got affected. So I'll try to execute here again. So if we can see earlier, we used to have a value called Hyperautomation-ai, right? But now it's been updated to UiPath. And now let's try to test it in our particular code using UiPath and see whether we are able to write the same thing or not. So I think we can also generate here using our expression. No need to go back to ChatGPT. Fine. So updating test one where uh, instead of UiPath now I'll say Hyperautomation AI. Right. So just save. So now in the data we can see here I have only the last name as UiPath. But now if I execute that in what I can say uh, in UiPath, now it will be updated to Hyperautomation AI. It's still UiPath, right? So what I need to do, I just need to come back to here, just hit on save all, try to run the file. Right range, yes, it did not write because it's there in the Excel. Okay, but we can still see that it's been updated. So what I'll do, I'll just run it again. See, so now the values are getting updated to high production area, right? So I just want to delete where the city is high level basically. So what I'll do is I'll try to write a query. So create a data SQL query for table name test one to delete rows where column value is Hyderabad. Okay. So let's try to see if it was able to generate a query for us. Yes, it was able to generate. So delete from test one where city is Hyderabad. It has created, right? Let's save this query. So it should be in the double quotes. Okay, save the query. So now we are having how many rows? Basically, let's see in the table. If we see, we have 28 rows of data. But after saying that, hey, delete the values for Hyderabad, let's see how many rows of data we have. So let me just run the board for us. So we have executed it properly. Let's say execute it from here. We have only 4 rows of data because what are the values that was related for these things? It's been deleted. City is Hyderabad, it's been deleted. Okay, that's how we can do a lot of queries here. So let's take some questions. So what is the difference between run command and run query? See, run query will it can help you to create only or run something that was related to a select query. And the outcome of run query is uh, the data table. But when it's coming to run command, you can utilize something related to insert, update, and delete. And the outcome is basically the number of rows that got affected. Okay. Hope I have answered your question, Nilesh. So
Yes.
same setup for all type
Yeah.
of deep connection, similar things. And also you can get the same data from your administrator. So how you can have the connections established? The same thing, like you need to configure the connection wizard, you need to provide the data source. So if it is Oracle, you need to select Oracle managed database, data access, or if it is something other files related to ODBC, you can select those things, right? That is how you can select your different databases, provide a server name, connect to the database and all this, right? Fine. So that's something we thought of showcasing it as part of present session. Uh, so we will be winding up for today. Hope if somebody get registered for the event of community day. So we have event running from 1 o'clock in T Hub. It's a um, in-person event. So hope I will meet you there. So I'm just stopping the recording. So what is using Excel as database?